Welcome in, welcome in. Hope you all enjoyed your week. Friday is here. Saturday football right around the corner. Got some football tonight. Thank you all for being in here. Scott saying, by the way, Ty and panel thank you for taking the time out of your day for us SEC fanatics. Thank you. Without you, without Ben G, without Tough as Nails, without everybody watching, this show is nothing. Without Coach Sean coming on and giving me his time as well, this show is nothing. So I really owe you the thanks. I owe Coach Sean the thanks. And speaking of, Coach, how are you today?
Great, man. I'm good to go. Been busy, ripping, running. What would life be, man, without children? You know what I'm saying? Can't complain, man. Big games this week. A little rainy outside. Let's talk about it.
Love it, love it. And we will, Benji, we're going to start with this one. Like I've always said, if y'all want something talked about, you put it down into the comments, and if we can slide it in, if we can get the time for it without completely wrecking any notion of what we were going to talk about, which usually I've said this before, there's no script. We'll just kind of meet in the green room for about 10 minutes before, kick it, talk about what we would like to cover on the stream, and then we end up going live. But yeah, let's start with this one, Benji. And I understand Texas's running back room is real banged up. It's kind of sad, and not sad in the sense of like you worry about Texas's offense. Sad in the sense of I really wanted to see CJ Baxter this year, right? Like I really wanted to see some of those guys be healthy. The same sort of sad when Quinn got hurt because he was off to the year that I had kept saying. And Texas fans, coach, they kept coming at me, not really like in a negative way. Texas fans and I have always had a pretty open discourse about this where they have disagreed with me, but I've always said Quinn is a great quarterback, but he's not there. There's something missing. And a lot of people thought I was being too hard on him. When he's hitting the deep shot at the rate he's hitting this year, when he's at the accuracy he's at this year, Sark's offense opens up. And we saw this whenever Texas came to Tuscaloosa. Quinn was automatic on those deep balls, and it became a nightmare to cover. Hell, coach, you and I remember what that Sark offense looks like. Mac Jones, he's a serviceable quarterback, right? I'm not
Right.
saying that he's the upper echelons of college football quarterbacks we've ever seen, but he's a darn good quarterback, especially in
Yes.
college. When he was hitting those deep shots, that offense was open, dangerous. I mean, unbelievable to watch. Probably, and I've said this before, DeBoer and Sark have my two favorite offenses in all of college football. There's a
Yeah.
reason why on this show we would talk about Washington, and I would always say, like, hey, I do believe in Sark. I understand that he's only had the 110 wins, but I do believe because I love his offense. I absolutely love it. So, talking about Texas, Mississippi State, Texas is a little banged up, but at the same time, Mississippi State is not the same Mississippi State that they were even a few years ago. Coach Sean, you've always talked about this. There are certain teams in the SEC where it's not that you're worried about losing the game,
Yeah.
but damn, do they just like punch you over and over and over again? And former Bama players, I believe it's Jonathan Allen, you always reference,
Facts.
would always say Mississippi State and Kentucky.
Yep.
After the game, you go take your ice bath, you go home, you go to sleep. While I think Kentucky is still one of those teams where it's not that you're worried about losing to Kentucky, but they just pride themselves on being a physical football team.
It's a
Right?
fact.
That's just their identity. Mississippi State has lost their identity. Coach, is there any universe in which Mississippi State can pull off this upset, or is it is unlikely as I believe it to be?
Sorry about that. Hit that mute button.
No, you're good.
Um, nah, man. Historically, Mississippi State has been just like Kentucky, not that team that's gonna beat you. We all know that. But that team that at home would fight you, especially on those night games, high ranking opponent coming in there. That team would fight you, man. They beat you up on the defensive side of the ball, really, really big physical offensive line. Last 2, 3 years, they really hadn't been that. You know, and I think it was the transition from what they used to do to this air raid system they went to with Mike Leach, and you know, it's just not the same physicality with Mississippi State team that was going to always win 7 games, 6 games, but a team that would if you look at their scores, team that would never really get blown out besides Bama, maybe a Georgia if they played them. The upper echelon SEC teams would blow them out, but a team that would definitely beat you up, fight you, you knew you were in a physical game. Right now, that is not the case. They just lost. I think they just lost their other quarterback that they had. What was it, Shapin? I
Yeah.
think his name. So the guy had 8 touchdowns and 1 interception. I mean, so that you lose him. You got Jay Daniels coming back at the running back. I think Coleman at the receiver. Nah, it's just these guys have holes on top of more holes. And then I think it was Coleman Hutzler. Was that his name? He used to be at Bama.
Yeah.
He's the defensive coordinator there. He's trying to implement a scheme that he does not have the personnel to be effective at the moment. They're going through some transition, man. And this is the big thing I try to tell Wisconsin fans. It's tough, man, when you're trying to go from a spread offense back to a physical offense, back to a spread offense. Same with defense. You're trying to be a athletic defense that can fly around. Then you're trying to go back to a 3-4 with these big, burly defensive linemen, gap scheming. You got to make up your damn mind. You know what you want to do. And right now, Mississippi State is going through that, man. They're gonna take their lumps this year, and I don't see in any stretch of the world where Texas has a problem with this team. But I will say this, man, if it was just all about picking teams and rolling
True.
helmets out there,
True.
hell, wouldn't be no reason to play the game, right?
True.
So, in a perfect world where the sun is shining and the grass is green, Texas should whip their asses. But,
It's
the game
football.
still got to be played. It's football, facts, all
Yeah,
facts,
it's football. Anything can happen.
fact.
And coach, while I talked earlier about the offensive side of Texas, you have some running backs banged up. I don't know if Ewers is playing in this game, but if he doesn't, I would love to see him play.
Yeah,
Not even for like the sake of, oh, we just both said Texas is going to win, because I think Arch has been very impressive when
yeah.
he's come in. He looks like he's going to be a quarterback. Sark's going to have a lot of fun coaching. I think the
Yeah,
Texas offense is going to be pretty fun under him. I'm very excited about those days. I kind of hope Quinn is completely healthy. I don't want him rushed back,
right.
but I want him completely healthy because, and this is an unfortunate reality that we've talked about before, Coach. Whenever you get to the NFL draft, there's a lot of people out there that work in the NFL whose job is to devalue players. Now, you might be
Right.
asking yourself, why is that? Why would they devalue a player? Because if you look at the pay rate as the first round goes on, and then even look at the decrease in the pay rate between the first round and the second round, and I don't foresee Quinn falling to the second round. That's not my contention here. My contention here is that if you're a team picking from 10 to 20, it serves you well to put out these false
Yeah,
narratives or narratives before the draft to be like, oh, well, so and so is this way. So and so is this way. This guy's lazy. This guy's got an attitude problem. And once again, none of this is directed at Quinn. I'm just painting
yeah,
the realistic picture that you go through. For Quinn, the argument would be he hasn't played a full football season since his sophomore year of high school. This is now the NFL. Monsters be everywhere here.
yeah,
That's going to be the argument. So the sooner he can come back, the better it serves his draft stock. And I want to see him get drafted as high as possible. I've said this before. I really, really enjoy watching Quinn Ewers play football. I was at Dave Campbell's Texas football whenever he was in high school. I covered that state championship game wherever he played Austin Westlake, Cade Klubnik versus Quinn Ewers in the state championship game. I was there in the end zone. So I want him to succeed. And that's why this injury in particular, coach, really kind of bothered me, because I was like, damn, he was off to a great start of the season. Like playing, in my opinion, the most complete football we've seen looking confident, looking like he's having fun. So I hope he's back if he's fully healthy. But in the event that he's not, this is a roundabout and long way to say that defense is going to be just fine against Mississippi State. I mean, that defense, they've got playmakers everywhere. Jahdae Barron, coach, is someone they moved from nickel corner to straight up corner. He's the guy who actually had, I believe, the second it was one of the two interceptions whenever Bama played Texas. Jahdae Barron had one of them, and it was the interception that was not on Milroe. Jahdae Barron baited him and made a hell of a play. He is a really good defensive back, probably my favorite player on that Texas team, if I'm going to be honest with you. He and Anthony Hill. Texas will be just fine. Texas will be just fine. So I really have nothing else to add onto this game, Coach. This one is a fairly easy one to pick, in my opinion.
Facts. I don't see the Mississippi State having the personnel or the coaching chemistry at the moment to be effective for a full football game against Texas. If Texas come out there and just beat half of Texas, they should win that game, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, well, speaking of a team being half of, and I apologize for that lead in, OU fans. Y'all are so damn injured, though.
Yeah.
Like, and Coach Sean and I, we were talking in the green room, and I don't even know how to view this season for Brent Venables and for Oklahoma because you're so banged up. It's like I can't in good conscience just be like bad because I don't think that there are many teams out there that could lose if you went into a 5 wide set, your 5 wide receivers are out. Like they're not there. I don't know of a team out there that has the depth to just feel good about all of the losses OU has taken. And I know I bring that because I know someone's going to say, oh, well, this is why you build depth. True. I don't even know if like a Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, Texas, those are very deep teams, very talented teams. I mean, they are 2 to 3 deep at every position. But that level of injury, even they would be like, okay. This is uncomfortable to say the least. But they go and play Auburn this weekend, Coach. Yeah. Here's how I look at this game. The one bright spot here, Coach, is that Hawkins, and shout out to Travis Davidson on Twitter. I was thinking this, but he's the one who put it out there first. So I do have to give credit where it is due. He put this out there before I could ever say it on a microphone. So shout out to Travis for this. But at the same time, Hawkins was working with the second team all offseason. So the one silver lining is he didn't have the chemistry with a lot of these starting wide receivers that Jackson Arnold did. He has a bit more chemistry with the guys that were in second, so he knows them pretty well. That should serve you. And Coach, Auburn's offense is abysmal, and Oklahoma's defense is not abysmal. Like, how do you view this game?
Listen, I'll say this, and Boomer said it himself. Boomer said, even the kicker is out. Damn. That's all I can say about that, man. It reminds me of Alabama about maybe 5 years ago when we had hella injuries. We end up starting 2 true freshmen in the middle linebacker spots in Shane Lee and Christian Harris. We had 8 freshmen on defense when we played LSU that year. Jordan Battle was a freshman. Those 2 guys were freshmen. DJ Dale was a freshman. We had all these freshmen on defense starting. So I understand, but this is how I see this game. It's going to be eerily similar on both sides of the ball. What I mean by that is you have a fairly good defense in Auburn, not an Oklahoma, style defense, but Auburn's defense is definitely the better of the 2 units as far as their right.
Yeah.
And they're playing at home, and usually Auburn's defense play pretty sound at home, right? against an Oklahoma offense that I don't quite know how it's going to look. The young man, the other quarterback, Hawkins, kid has great, got great wheels on him. Kid can pull it down, and you in man coverage, he can kill you, right? Um, I don't know, like you said, the continuity between him and the second receiver should be better, right? So maybe this offense will be better. Maybe. I don't know yet. I guess we'll find out today. Going against an Auburn defense that's pretty good, and vice versa, a Auburn offense that's utterly ridiculous going against Oklahoma's defense, which is spectacular. So you factor in the home cooking for about 7 points, and you look at these teams at this stage, not yet that Hawkins hadn't played, but I mean at this stage, before Hawkins played his first game as the starter, and they look very similar. You look at the receiving yards. You got Jay Arnold for Auburn, 41 catches for 138 yards, almost 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Excuse me, for Oklahoma, you go to Jarquez Hunter for the rushing yards, 48 carries, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns. Um, you look at how they are on both offenses, and both offenses are eerily similar, right? I think Oklahoma's defense is the standout unit. Auburn being at home, it is at Auburn, right? If I'm not mistaken,
Yeah, it's
right?
it's at Jordan Hare.
Okay, so that crowd at Jordan Hare is going. This is a desperate game, man.
They
This
have
is
to
a
win this.
Yeah, this is a game that Auburn's going to pull out all the stops. They're going to throw the sink, the kitchen tiles, the cabinets, the refrigerator. They're going to throw everything at Oklahoma, right? And as I said last week, as me and you both said last week, Oklahoma's defense will keep them in this game. Oklahoma's defense will give them an opportunity to win this game. It's just what the hell is the offense going to do? And vice versa with Auburn. I think Auburn's offense will play well this game. Not because of schematics, not because of Coach Freeze, just because of pride, being at home, new SEC team coming in here with the name of Oklahoma. When you think of the two schools that we've got, Oklahoma and Texas, that's not Vanderbilt and South Carolina. These teams garner your attention through the week. You know what I mean? So you're not gonna have any wake up practices, any sleep walking practice. It's Oklahoma coming to your home, right? So that alone will wake you up. Those kids will play well. Trust me on defense. It's just gonna be a coin toss of who scores points. I think points are gonna come at a hard premium today. I think the defenses will be, excuse me, Saturday. I think the defenses will be the two catalysts for these teams. Which offense will be able to produce points? Shout out to Janet. So good to see you, Janet. I hadn't seen you in so long, man. Janet, love you to death. Shout out to you. Roll Tide to you, Janet. We about to put some belts to some asses Saturday and
Oh, we'll be
remind the
covering
world
that
of who
game
we are,
shortly.
right? So to me, it's a toss up, man. Which offense can score points? Oklahoma's defense is going to come to play. Defense travels. Auburn will be at home. They'll play with pride today on the defensive side of the ball. Which offense is going to score? Does Hawkins look good and Oklahoma all of a sudden is able to move the ball? They put him in great situations, or do they go on the road with that loud crowd and struggle? Vice versa with Auburn. Does Peyton Thorne come out there and add to his 7 touchdown, 5 interception stat line, right? Or does he come out and actually look like Mike Vick like he did against our asses last year? So it's going to be very, 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 very weird, right? Um, Benji, my bad, Benji. I got love for you for sure, man, sweetie. My bad, Benji. I love you to death. Texas is going to
We
put some
just
belts. Yeah, Texas is going to in the sheer words of Josh Pate, shout out to Josh Pate at 24/7, and not 247, but what does he call it now? Pates. What does he call it? The new
it's
logo and everything?
247, but it's Pate State.
Pate State, baby. In the
Yeah.
words of Pate State, they're going to paint the walls red with Mississippi State's blood today, right? So we all know that, and that's what it is, BNG. It's going to be some belts taken out really, really early over there. I expect the 15th string to be playing by the third quarter, right? So it's nothing to really be said about that, BNG. You can chew some bubble gum and drink some coffee at the same time today, baby. Y'all got to win. But Auburn, whichever offense comes to play, probably is going to win this game because both defenses are going to cancel each other out, along with Auburn being at home.
This is the interesting part about this game to me, Coach Sean, is it does, and this is a little bit of a hot take. It does kind of feel like for Freeze, you are coaching for your job a little bit right here. Ben G with the $10 saying, that's what I like to hear, Hook 'em. Thank you very much for the donation, Ben G. And listen, yeah, like we said, we can cover Texas, Mississippi State,
Facts.
but I'd want to give you a thorough analysis of like how this team could win. I don't know how Mississippi State could win unless you just have one of those days, which every team has. I just don't see it, right? Like one of those days where everything goes wrong. You fumble the opening kickoff. You fumble the first handoff once you get the ball back. You have a ball tipped at the line of scrimmage. It's intercepted, picks. That's what I mean where I'm like one of those days. Outside of that, I have nothing for you in terms of how Mississippi State beats Texas, and I don't foresee one of those days. But
Let me say this, Ty.
by all means.
It's going to be really interesting to see is Oklahoma's offensive line. Have they gotten any better? Have they fixed anything? Because that defensive front for Auburn is going to be active, man. Don't be fooled, please. Auburn has looked atrocious on offense, but at times on defense, they've been dominant. At times, their defense has kept them in a few games that they should have been blown out in. Um, so it's gonna be interesting, man. If I was an Oklahoma fan, I'd really, really have my eye on that offensive line. And how do they use Hawkins? Do they use Hawkins the same way they use Jackson Arnold? Is the scheme the same?
They're
Right? How do
switching
they?
off of that RPO. They're
Yes.
getting away from
Oh,
that,
mm,
and they're going to. This is how I look at this game, Coach Sean.
yeah.
One, I think that both of the teams need the win. Okay,
Yes.
both of them need the win, but they need it in different ways. Auburn needs it um, because they've been bad. And
Yeah.
they don't have the luxury. I shouldn't say a luxury, but y'all will understand what I mean when I say this. If you had to go to your boss and say my performance has been bad because it's been bad,
Yeah.
that's one thing. If you had to go to your boss and say my performance has been bad because the office burnt down and all of my files were in the office, all of my storage was on that high hard drive and it just burnt up and I've been just trying to play catch up, your boss is probably going to be like, that sucks. I
Yes.
have a hard time faulting you. And the reason I give you that analogy, one team has been far healthier than the others. And
Mhm.
so for me, Hugh Freeze, he has to win this game. Like they
Yeah.
just have to. OU at least has this notion of like, okay, well, we're just so banged up. We're just trying to like piecemeal stuff together right now. We still don't know what our offensive line looks like completely because of all these injuries. Now there's a quarterback change. There's more moving parts at OU than there is at Auburn, which leads me to this analysis that Auburn has to have this win. Like they have to. For Hugh Freeze, what's the schedule looking like for Auburn after this? Because I know a lot of people were saying, oh, well, this is an 8-year or at least an 8-win year for Auburn. Well, they thought that you would win against Cal. They thought you would win against Arkansas. You lost both of those games. You have Oklahoma this weekend. You have Georgia next weekend. You have Missouri after that. You have Kentucky after that. You have Vanderbilt after that, and let Diego Pavia get up in Auburn again and whoop their ass a second time like he did
Yep.
at New Mexico State. You have Louisiana Monroe. You'll win that game. You have Texas A&M. You have Alabama. I know the Alabama game is a rivalry, but they're playing in Tuscaloosa, Coach, and we know history tends to show Auburn plays Alabama and Georgia like the 85 Bears in Jordan Hare Stadium, but for everybody else, it's the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I mean, they just get whipped. But then when Auburn travels to Georgia or to Bama, it's not the same
So
Auburn
different.
team.
Facts. Facts.
And Benji, you beat me to it. Two things for this game, Coach, and I want to get your take on this. One, Hawkins might not be experienced, but I saw against Arkansas, Auburn's defense does not know what to do against a mobile quarterback. Good
Yeah.
news, Bama fans, because when they face Milrow, like they looked lost against a mobile quarterback. And I like Green, but Milroe and this offense are further ahead than Green is right now, right? So the threat of the pass, and he's a different type of runner. Hawkins will have success on the ground. And then, two, coach, Auburn can't stop turning the ball over.
Facts.
So
All facts.
I think Oklahoma's defense could score some points here. For that reason, I'm taking Oklahoma to win this game. And if you're Hugh Freeze and you lose to an Oklahoma team whose defense is really, really, really good, genuinely, like the defensive turnaround he's led, very impressive. But if you lose to an OU team at home that's this banged up, that's just pulled their starting quarterback, now starting a true freshman, are you on the hot seat if you're Hugh Freeze? I'm interested in your takes on that.
I think Hugh Freeze has created a I won't say the bad word, I'll say a defecation storm around him with some of the comments that he's made, right? I don't think Brent Venables is in any trouble at all. I think it would be asinine to even entertain that, right? Brent Venables is a hell of a coach. You got to give him time to really get his offensive scheme to catch up with the defensive scheme. Every coach who specializes on one side of the ball, that side of the ball would be probably ahead for a year or two. You know what I mean? If not three, until you can get the correct offensive or defensive personnel that you want to run to match the defensive scheme that you bring or the offensive scheme with you from your previous school. Brent is fine. The dude won what 10 games last year? What 10 games? I think
10
Oklahoma
games,
won.
yeah.
I mean, let's stop even talking about that, right? That'll be asinine on Oklahoma's part. Trust me. Um, but as far as Auburn, it's some things going on at Auburn behind the scenes, man, that I'm hearing about that's bigger than just a coach losing football games. It's a disconnect between some of the players and Hugh Freeze's style. You know, yeah. Thank you, Janet. Janet said it for me. Janet said it for me. you know, um, and when I say and to Benji, when I say his offensive scheme, what I'm saying is Brent Venables is a defensive coach. So the defense will be ahead of the offense in his first couple of years because every coach reverts, even Coach Saban reverts back to what he knows. That's what makes the coach, right?
That's why you got to
I'm a
nail that
yeah,
opposing side
yes.
higher.
Thank you. That's why you got to nail that opposing side higher. That is 100% facts. With Coach Saban, he sort of had it great because he just brought a mini me and Kirby Smart who ran his defense, right? The key was always to hire that offensive coordinator. Who can we hire to make our offense actually play as consistent as our defense? And that's every coach. That's every coach, guys. The great ones figure it out. Give Brent time. Brent will be just fine. Look at Sark. Sark's first couple years, Benji, the offense was always multiple. You guys never had problems scoring points, but your defense was young, getting burnt like marshmallows in that secondary. I mean, you got to give the coach who has his forte time to get
Yes.
someone on the other side of the ball who match what he loves to do in his expertise. So it'll be fine, man. But now Auburn, as far as Coach Freeze go, I've never heard a coach really get under a podium and say the things he said. I get it, man, frustration, but that man basically said verbatim, "Well, we got to find a quarterback who won't throw the other team the ball." Like, damn, right? Do the people that be know that he's running your offense? Some of those ridiculous West Coast principles when these guys are sitting on everything and you still continue to run it, like that's 2001 offensive stuff, right? People don't even play those styles of defensive principles anymore. These big 6'4", 260-pound linebackers that can stop the run but can't run vertical sideline to sideline horizontally. So his offensive scheme, quite frankly, sucks. It just does. This is not Ole Miss from 7, 8, 9 years ago. He has to catch up with what's going on today. He has to understand that when you're in high school, the best offensive player, when I was in high school, the fastest, quickest guy played offense. Now that same fastest, quickest guy is playing edge rusher. They're putting the best athlete on defense now. So you have to change your offensive philosophy, man. The great coach Saban himself had to. Lane, I got a job for you. You got to change, brother. You asking Peyton Thorne to do some things that Peyton Thorne is not capable of doing. And if you do that today, Oklahoma's going to put some belt to some asses. It's just what it is. So Hugh Freeze is desperate for him because those guys have spent a lot of money at Auburn this offseason. They spent a lot of money, man. And I'm not talking about transfer portal. I'm talking about to get freshmen to sign with you. I know personally, they paid a lot of yellow wood, man. And the results are utterly ridiculous right now. So he has to get this win. If you can beat Oklahoma, that'll stop the bleeding for a little while, right? Because just as well as Auburn need this win, Oklahoma needs it as well. You know, the Red River rivalry is coming up very, very soon. You don't want to go into that game with a couple of losses limping in there. You want a big win on the road against some opponents. So this is an important game. Shout out to Dexter Wright, man. I ain't seen my boy Dexter in so long.
I
Janet,
know.
so good to see them, man. This is an important game, man. But I would dare say, as far as coaching, is probably more important for Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, yeah. And Ben G, you make some really good points right here, right? And I do want to unpack this because this right here, and I completely agree, Boomer. OU's there's no thinking to this, Boomer 129. OU's defense is better than Arkansas's. I think Cal played really good in that game. Their defensive backs played really, 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 really good in that game against Auburn. So I do want to give some respect out to Cal in that game. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I haven't watched a lot of Cal since that game. But in that game, I was like, damn, okay, y'all came to play. It's still not OU's defense, right? Like, that's just the fact of the matter. OU's defense is far better. Far, 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 far better than either of those. But Ben G, this is a really good comment, and it's a string of them, Benji. So I do want to go through them because I agree in part, and I don't necessarily even disagree. I think the only areas where there might be quote unquote disagreement is just two different ways of looking at it, right? But this is interesting, Coach Sean. Benji says, my thing about BV is that since he's a defensive head coach, it's going to be hard fielding a good offense year in and year out. You get a good offensive coordinator, they usually get hired as a head coach later. And that does seem to be true, right? Whenever you look at this, there's this pipeline from offensive coordinators to head coach, and it's been rampant. I mean, you look at Jeff Lebby, right? Like, that proves it. Whereas Pete Golding is still a defensive coordinator. Jeff Lebby is now the head coach at Mississippi State. Lane Kiffin's at Ole Miss. Steve Sarkisian is at Texas. So there's some facts there. Bob is at Boston College, right? There's some facts there. I definitely don't disagree with that. I think it's about finding the right OC, Benji, that's complementary to your defense, and hopefully you get them young. Whenever Oklahoma was going through the hiring process, I wanted them to hire Brennan Marion. Now, this was a double-edged sword. I didn't want them to hire Brennan Marion because I'm very high on Brennan Marion. And then it's like Oklahoma, you have a brand, right? There's only, what would you say, Coach Sean, maybe 10 colleges in all of college football that genuinely have a brand powerful enough to at least get you in a door. I'm not saying win the recruiting battle, but get you in a door. OU's one of them, right? Yes. Like, off the top of my head, you have Bama, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida, LSU, OU, and this is in no particular order. I said LSU, Texas, OU, USC. Like, they do have a Notre Dame less. They've done a lot to hurt their brand in terms of just like inconsistencies, but like it's still a very but you guys get my point. There are certain teams out there that it's like, even if you aren't at the top 1% of college football, your logo will get you in a recruiting battle. Won't win it for you, but like you have that brand capital. Brennan Marion to me would have been the hire for Oklahoma. He's at UNLV. He's their offensive coordinator. Texas fans, you'll know of him, that go-go offense. He came from Pitt, where Jordan Addison was one of his wide receivers whenever he was the wide receiver coach. I've loved what he's done. Absolutely have loved what Brennan Marion has done. I'm not sold on Seth, but I'm at this same place where I don't know if Seth is the one to blame or if it's just injuries and his philosophy didn't align with Jackson Arnold. And I must give that consideration, even though I think it's your job as a coach to adapt to your players. I also think that there has to be some sort of realistic expectation in that, where it's like, okay, maybe y'all are just on total polar ends of the spectrum, and it's just not going to be a marriage that works. John, how are you, my man? Driving? Hope you're staying safe. Don't look at me. This pretty face will be here.
I'm good, man. I'm enjoying the weather where I'm at, where it's not raining, and you guys are experiencing the complete opposite. Well, not you, but Coach over there, I'm sure. So, no, I'm enjoying the great weather. Now I just dropped the kids off at school and driving back here in a little bit. So, yeah. So, and I was listening, back to the point of the OCs becoming head coaches and stuff like that. I guess, can we agree maybe that the trend lately has been really the defensive coaches that have become head coaches to kind of take over the programs and become more successful, in my opinion, especially if BV ends up, you know what I mean, turning out to do what we all expect him to do with Nick Saban, right, with Kirby Smart and these guys. I think when it comes to national championships right now, I would rather have a defensive coordinator as a head coach than an offensive coordinator. Just my opinion.
So I have a counter question for you there, John, right? And just in fairness, because I don't think you're wrong, but how much of that opinion is skewed because Nick Saban and Kirby did Nick Saban and Kirby things, right? Because if we're not looking at that, you have Dabo, who's an offensive-minded guy, Harbaugh, who's an offensive-minded guy, and then even last year you had Kalen DeBoer offense. 3 of the 4 teams in the Natty last year were all offensive in the playoffs last year were all offensive-minded coaches. So I don't disagree with you. But I also must acknowledge the reason I don't disagree with you is because we've had Coach Saban. And so that's absolutely skewed my view of like, oh, I'd love a defensive-minded coach. How much of Coach Saban and Smart like affect that view?
No, it does affect it a lot, but I'm also considering the fact that if you look at the trend as well, how many defensive guys are being hired as head coaches versus offense, right? So we got to look at that statistic and do that standard deviation of saying, well, if 3/4 of the hires are offensive-minded coaches, only a quarter of it's defensive-minded. We also got to adjust that to the success as well. That's just my opinion.
Fair. Offensive head coaches to defensive ones. Why? Because elite quarterbacks will always like to a proven head coach. They can follow an OC, but there's a risk that they leave. I don't think you're 100% wrong there, Benji, either, right? But I think it all just depends where you want to go. Because I think that you can then have some great defensive players that would follow a defensive coordinator. Right. So I think that kind of stands, but I do acknowledge, Benji, that the quarterback's the only player on the field outside of the center that touches the ball every single snap. So there is that level of importance. So I'm certainly not conflating the difference between an edge rusher and a quarterback. But I think you understand where I'm going with this. I don't think that there is a right answer. I think that there is preferences, and depending on how you make your argument, you could make either preference work. I have nothing to necessarily disagree with you, Benji. And Jacob Woodyard, happy to see you in here, my man. Hope you've been good. He said Sark is offensive minded, but is building towards a great defense and complete team. No, he's not building towards it. This is where I disagree with you. You are there. That's my only disagreement with you, Jacob, is that you're not building towards it anymore. You're there. Sark's done a hell of a job at assembling that staff. You're there. The edge position for Texas is really good, even though I don't think you have those 2 interior monsters that you had last year. The interior guys have played really well. Like Coach I and I were talking about this. He and I were like, we're really shocked that there hasn't been the drop off, at least in the front 7 for the first few games while y'all are figuring things out along the defensive front. They're playing good football. And then when you have the edge guys that you do, I mean, they're playing good football. Texas's defense, it's here, right? Like you had one thing, Coach Sean pointed this out earlier. Your defense last year was very good in every area except one. Your secondary was suspect. It's looking much better this year. But I will say this, and then John, I want to get your take on this Auburn OU game because and you're right, Benji, that Anthony Hill and Jahdae Barron are my two favorite players on your entire team. I love Anthony Hill. I wanted him at Bama so darn bad. I got to watch him play so much. Texas Homer is an unexpected surprise. We do well against run situationally. We gave up some. Yeah, I think that's exactly where I'm at, Homer, is like Coach I of Fan Addicts Perspective and we were talking and we were like, we thought Texas wouldn't be bad on the interior of their defensive line. That's not my contention. But we just thought it would take maybe until this game right here before you had finally settled in and we're like, okay, here we are. We're good. That hasn't been the case. You've been much better, quicker than I think a lot of people thought. But I am glad you're in here, Homer, because I was just about to reference you. As we're talking about the hiring processes for offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, I remember whenever Texas was assembling their staff, and Homer and I were talking, and he was telling me, he's like, I love the PK hire. He's like, but the timing of it is interesting, being that he was the last hire they made. Sark's an offensive coach. The last hire was a defensive guy. And you were fascinated to see how it worked. Now it's worked. But this is what Coach Sean means, ladies and gentlemen, when we say if you're an offensive-minded head coach, you have to nail the defensive hire. If you're a defensive-minded head coach, you have to nail the offensive coordinator hire. And right now, like I said, I am somebody who I always look for the nuance. So I'm not going to say with full certainty, but in my opinion, you didn't nail Seth Luttrell. And I will hold out once you get healthier, right? Maybe he and Jackson Arnold just weren't meant for each other. But even then, like, you got to account for that. Seth Luttrell, I don't know if he's the answer long term. But, John, I want to get your take on Oklahoma Auburn.
Man, this is a tough one. I feel like both of these teams have to win, in my opinion. When you look at Auburn, the hell Hugh Freeze is catching right now. I don't know if you guys saw, but On3 just reported 2 hours ago. Lane Kiffin came out with some statements about Hugh Freeze trying to steal his assistants and all that. So, I mean, the nuance just continues with the Hugh Freeze just
good
chaos within Auburn, which I love as an Alabama fan, right? So, I mean, don't get me wrong. They need to sign Hugh Freeze to a 10-year extension at this point. But no, you look at Peyton Thorne, you look at what's his name, Hank Brown, I believe his name is, the freshman quarterback there. Complete disaster. And with that being said, they're semi-effective at running the ball, but I definitely don't think they're good enough to be consistent enough, especially against the OU defense. The OU defense is, in my opinion, elite. It's near the top in the country.
Especially in that front seven. I mean, that's
front seven. Oh my gosh, man. It's ridiculous. It's most likely, in my opinion, the best front seven in college football, arguably some people can challenge Tennessee, right? You know what I mean? And there's going to be more we're going to see throughout the season. But when I look at that and just the chaos, I guess the turmoil that Auburn's in, their defense, in my opinion, is playing pretty subpar, right? So it's going to come down to, what we see out of the true freshman behind center, really, for OU. His name escapes me right off the top of my head.
Michael Hawkins.
There we go, Hawkins. I always forget his name. Michael, how he's going to play, right? So how is he going to look under Seth Luttrell? Because my biggest argument of Seth Luttrell the last game was it wasn't just bad play calling. It was the fact that you were continuing to make these calls that were not helping Jackson Arnold. He was struggling throwing out to the flats. He was struggling throwing to screens. He couldn't get the ball to the receivers. But yet he continued to call those plays instead of adjusting it any type of way to the quarterback. So I'm interested to see, is he going to utilize Hawkins to his strengths? And I'm talking about throwing the ball. He looks great as a thrower when you're talking about short and intermediate. How's he going to look as a deep thrower, right? And I think it's going to come down to being in the plains at Auburn. I believe, Auburn's going to sell this out, by the way. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but Hugh Freeze and that whole administration is trying to get that place packed. They want this to be the comeback for Hugh Freeze, and you know what I mean. Like, I guess garner some type of momentum, whatever that's going to look like for Auburn. And they're playing OU, right? So I mean, it's going to be chaos. But I said the same thing about Michigan versus USC. I couldn't find a way for Michigan to beat USC. I can't find a way in this game really for Auburn to beat OU at the same time. But we know how it goes in the Plains, man. We know how it goes at Auburn and Jordan Hare. Like, these games tend to be really unpredictable and chaotic. So it's going to be interesting to see how BB handles this. Seth Luttrell handles it. And yeah, I mean, I got OU winning this game. In my opinion, it shouldn't be that close of a game. Peyton Thorne the dude can't throw a football, right? So I think it's pretty clear what OU has to do defensively. It's going to be a low-scoring game, most likely. Michael Hawkins, that's kind of lean on him, and hopefully you see some type of improvement out of that offensive line, because I don't care who's behind center. If that offensive line performs like it did against Tennessee, and I get it, Tennessee has a great defense, but if it looks anything like that, they're going to be in trouble all year. So, but yeah, I do have OU winning this game, though.
Coach Sean, any thoughts?
Same as John. Same as John, man. They got a lot of different things. Shout out to my brother John too, man. Good to see you, John, for sure, bro.
You too, Coach.
Shout out to Coach. Shout out to Coach Carl too, and Coach Al.
And Coach
Shout out to
Al,
all
yep.
these guys are absolutely great. Make sure you tap in with these guys, man. These guys are awesome. I watch their channels, you know, along with my brother Grandolph right here, Ty. You know what I mean? Ty, debate King Hayes. Never get into a debate with a debater because you lose, right? Listen, at the end of the day, man, this game is sort of interesting to me, man, because if one thing I know about Auburn, they're one of those teams that's so smart that they're dumb, if that makes any sense. Like, you know, these guys that
Yeah,
have
overthinking, and then
they have all the answers, but no damn questions, if you know what I'm saying. Auburn could come out there and play well this game, man. It wouldn't shock me if they come out there and play well, but I am utterly hoping again, put my faith in Oklahoma, that they'll bring their belts with them. We don't want Auburn to win. With being an Alabama fan, I take graciousness and joy every time that they lose. I will be honest. So it's going to be interesting, man. Is this team going to come out and play well against a madhouse? Right? Are they going to play well? What are they going to do? What's going to happen in this game? And I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, for me, and we'll wrap this up with this. Jacob, I know you'd asked about Oklahoma defense versus Texas defense. That'd be an interesting comparison. I will come back to this once. I would like OU to play, and both teams to play a little bit more, right? It's tough right now because of all the injuries OU has faced. But how is Texas's resume worse than OU? I don't think there's a way you could argue Texas's resume is worse than Oklahoma's. Texas has a Power 4 win. And honestly, and I get it. It was bad USC. But that still does help Texas's case, right? The fact that Michigan ran all day long against USC and they couldn't get an inch against Texas. Right? So I still contend that I don't think Michigan is that great of a team. I don't think that they're bad. Don't get me wrong, right? They are mid. It's not bad, it's not great. They're mid. They do have a good defense. I give you that. Their defense is good. Their offense is bad, which then equates us to mid, right? They're a mid football team. But the way that they beat USC does help Texas, and I will contend that. Hell, on this show, we even said Texas does deserve to be ranked number 1. I don't know who you would put ahead of them. I don't. So Texas has the better resume right now, and it was on the road, right? Like that's what it is to me. They got that road win. Shout out to Hayes in the chat. Hope you're doing well, Hayes. Hope you guys are staying safe down in that area with all the storms and the hurricanes. We're, pretty good up here in North Texas. It's just Well, Coach Sean's, you're not in North Texas. And John, you're not in North Texas, but you're in Texas.
Yeah,
so.
I'm in South Texas.
I speak for everybody, though, that we're in North Texas.
Yeah, here it looks like it's the wind's blowing extremely hard. It's overcast like a mug, rained all night long, so I'm hoping it gets its hurricane feel out the way so we'll have at least a decent Saturday. And we'll be thankful to the good Lord for whatever he brings, though. That's just what it is.
100%, 100%. I'm hoping that the weather is good. Ben G
Yeah.
says, I'm in Galveston. Hope Galveston's doing well, man. I know Galveston can just get hit real hard by some of those storms. Beautiful. Good to hear then. Hayes saying weather's beautiful in Louisiana. Love to hear it, Hayes. We just got done talking about Oklahoma, Auburn. Really interesting game because in a lot of ways the teams mirror each other. Both offenses have yet to really establish an identity for different reasons. OU's so banged up. But I mean, defensively, I just don't know how Auburn finds success against Oklahoma's defense, whereas I think Auburn's a little bit susceptible to the quarterback run. Hawkins provides that for Oklahoma, which I think then gives an edge to Oklahoma in this game. Benji asked Hayes for some nuggets, and Hayes says, no nuggets, man. Class of 2025 is all but done, it feels like. Only about 16 blue chip recruits uncommitted now. We will have flips and decommits too. Hayes, I have a question for you real quick. Does it feel like with the transfer portal opening up to the extent that it has, with NIL where it is, that classes and recruiting classes are kind of filling up earlier than they used to? Because it feels to me like every year in August, these teams are pretty much more done with their recruiting classes than they were when I first got into this, which was 2021. Interested in hearing your thoughts on that. And guys, if y'all want to add into that as well, if you have any thoughts, any disagreements with me there. But John, it felt like in 2021, 22, when you and I were doing a lot of stuff, we were still in September, October being like, oh, Bama's got 7 spots left. Where do they go?
Well, you have to consider that the transfer portal window is shrunken, right? So when me and you first started, it was 60 days. Now it's 45 days. Now they're trying to pass it to go to 30 days starting this upcoming season. So when you tend to do that, it seems like the recruiting and transfer portal players kind of bounce off of each other to see who does what in some circumstances, right? Especially when you got high profile players like Jackson Arnold, whatever that may look like. And I think that's kind of the reason why. And you're also going to see it change as well, because we got to consider the whole 105 scholarship limit now, possibly eliminating walk-ons and stuff like that. So you're definitely going to see that go up in style as well. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot more changes to come, especially with the whole Matthew Sluss thing going on, right? And now Bear over at USC, these guys holding out, right? Because they're redshirting themselves and then transferring because they're not getting what they want. Whatever your opinion is on that, I'm not going to give that personally, but yeah, I think when you consider everything that's going on, look, I think Nick Saban was a savant. He saw this coming, I think, and I think that man got out at the right time, because you see this slowly but surely starting to turn a little sideways, and if we don't pay attention and get a grip on this from a university standpoint, God help the NCAA come in with some committee to form something, and then they have control on this. Because me personally, I can't stand the NCAA. Every time they get their hands on something, it turns sideways. And right now, it seems like this would be the perfect opportunity for them to do that. So, yeah.
Revenue sharing.
Yes, exactly.
That's so here's some of the issue, John. The NCAA is going to try and reel in what's going on with the transfer portal and some of this stuff. They're instantly going to get hit by an injunction from some judge somewhere in the country that says because you cannot pass antitrust muster, you can't do anything. They tried to eliminate the unlimited transfer window in January, but a judge in West Virginia was just like, oh, I'm putting a 14-day injunction in this. And instead of just waiting for those 14 days, the NCAA went, my bad, fam, and backed out of the equation completely. They don't want the smoke. They have too many cases on docket right now that they know are going to absolutely shift the landscape. And it's not a coincidence to me that 10 days after NCAA versus Alston was decided, after Justice Kavanaugh's quote went viral, that the NCAA figured out how to do NIL. Does that not strike anybody else as odd either? It was 10 days.
Bro, I'm telling you, yeah, I can't stand this. I've preached this ever since I started the YouTube channel on college football. I said the NCAA to me is just a disaster. It always has been a disaster. The fact that I believe the NCAA, quote me if I'm wrong, the NCAA commissioner, doesn't he make in a ballpark of $20 million a year?
Listen,
like some insane number. Like it blows my mind how much power these guys used to have and hold over these players. But yeah,
NCAA.
I'm
Go
sorry
ahead, Coach
about
Sean.
that.
Go ahead.
I have a unique perspective on this
Yeah, you played, so I love
because
to hear this.
I tell people all the time, man, even at the HBCU level where the funding and the money is nothing like it is at Alabama and Auburn, but you still go by the same rules, practices, uh,
yeah,
student athlete compensation, what you can do outside of the scholarship, what you can do within the due bounds of the scholarship. It's all the same. So I've spoke about this, man, ever since I've been on this YouTube thing. I've spoke about this when we was on Kyle's platform. I've spoken length about this, bro, because I've witnessed it. I've been a part of it. And here's what's unique about it. And Coach Carl can speak to this. Coach Al can speak to this. I've seen it from a player standpoint. I've had the coaches in my living room selling me the program, selling me UAB, selling me Tuskegee, selling me Alabama A&M, selling me Troy State University, selling me Louisiana Lafayette. I've had all these. Still got all the letters I got from way back then, right? I've also been on the coaching side of it, JC. I've seen it from the coaching side to the kid. So, bro, I'll say this, and a lot of people won't understand this. That never. It's kind of like caviar. Some people love caviar. Most of us that's never had caviar just assume we're gonna hate it, right? I don't know if I'm gonna like it or not, but just when I find out what caviar is, my brain is telling me you're not gonna like that shit. No, you're not gonna like that. So I'll say this to some people, and the people that know, no. People that don't probably gonna assume. I know what it feels like. If you think this is fair, just I guess we just can agree to disagree. I know what it feel like to be that kid walking down the block on your campus, and you walk by the bookstore and you see your jersey up in the window, right? And at that time, they still put names on them. At this time, late '90s, early 2000s, they still had names on you. They pulled them off after the AJ McCarron stuff. They pulled them off. The NCAA got smart. I know what it feel like to have your jersey, whether it's your name on there or not. It's your number, and everybody knows it. I know what it feel like to have students come buy that jersey because it's yours out there. They're not buying it because of the company who made it. They're not buying it because of the nice fabric it's made of. They're buying it because it's your number. They love the university. They're supporting you. I know what it feel like to have $17 in your pocket while they make 3,200 a day over selling 50 or 60 jerseys. And the dude that's selling the jerseys don't even say hello to you. You know what I'm saying? I know what that feels like. He's selling your jersey, won't even give you a handshake, and you have not a damn cent in your pocket. If you think that's fair, I don't know where you from, how you living. Maybe if you have money all your life, you don't miss it, right? But I can assure you, when you don't have it, you miss it, right? Um, and that's what we've been doing to these kids, bro. You can call it what you want. The NCAA has been at the forefront of this forever, and the courts told the NCAA when the NCAA came running, trying, "Hey, courts, can you help us now?" The courts was said a resounding hell no. No, we don't want no parts of what you're doing because you've been doing this from football's inception. You take these kids that come from these less fortunate areas, you put their face on front of all these things that has nothing to do with their football scholarship. Nothing. You put them at golf courses, you bring them on walkthroughs, you making money outside of the university, all because player such and such. So this guy's getting paid, that guy's getting paid, all while the kid got $17 in his pocket. Now, if you think that's fair, bro, I don't know what to tell you. But now the player in 2025 is like, no, we have these little computers that we call phones, these
yep,
little things here, and they are a lot smarter than we were. They know rules. They know all type of things that we had never even heard of, right? You get that scholarship, you don't read all that stuff, man. Where do I sign? You don't read all that stuff. You don't even know what the hell it's talking about. It sounds like a petition. Wherefore, Ty, you know about wherefore thou art, whatever. You're like, what are you talking about? Like, we don't even know. A lot of times the parents don't even know. We just know the tuition's paid for, and it's a year-to-year renewable contract. It's not a 4-year thing. It's a year-to-year renewable contract. It is. It says it right there in plain English. So the bottom line is, to be quick, now the players are a lot smarter. You won't use my face unless you give me this.
Yep.
Now that's hurting in a way because you have some selfishness which is creeped in, which will always happen when you have money, which will always happen. But the revenue sharing is where I think if they come on with the that's where they can control it. With the revenue sharing, we're going to give you each player blah 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 blah. But now with the revenue sharing, it's a nice little lump sum. But now with the revenue sharing, we can tell your asses what to do. If you do this, you get nothing. If you do that, you can control it. No more hiding. No more. I'll offer you 200 million. This dude offer you 500 million. No more of that. It's gonna be above board. Everybody will know what everybody's doing. No more hiding. No more debating under the board. So you got to fix it, man. You got to play ball in order to fix the game.
I completely agree. And the one thing and I could be wrong on this, I would love, man, I wish Chris was here. In my opinion, the way that the NCAA can start passing antitrust muster is by revenue sharing, because then you can argue that, no, these are employees paid a fair market wage by us sharing the fair market wage. Therefore, we can pass antitrust structure and we can move forward. That's the only way I see this happening, gentlemen. That's it.
Ask you something real quick, Ty, really quickly. This is important. To the fan out there that just texted me and was like, well, why don't we just go back to how it used to be? This is a quick question. You could just say, well, all these businesses that's using the kids' face to make these, why don't they just stop? Then we can go back to you play football, we pay for your tuition, we don't have to pay you nothing. Guess why they won't ever do that? Because let's just make up a name. Let's just say Ty Hayes Withholdings. Ty Hayes Withholdings made anywhere from 17 to 20 million every quarter. Well, now that they've got Julio Jones as their partner on their golf courses, walkthrough, steakhouse, they make 58 million. They ain't trying to go backwards. I'd rather cut you in on a deal than go backwards and make less money. This
Pandora's box has been opened.
Oh,
there is no going back.
Yep.
It's a whole fact.
What happened.
Yeah. And Jonathan Miller, if you wouldn't mind, I have a little bit of homework. Now, stay away from him. Y'all don't need him. I know I see you, Texas fan. You've got Khalil Lockett. You've got your wide receivers. You don't need him. Check out Lotsier Brooks.
Oh my gosh, Dude. Oh my Lord, bro.
Bama found a gym. Dude was ranked outside the top 1,000 and is setting every record in New Jersey. But seriously, Jonathan, look up Lotsier Brooks, and you'll see a speed wide receiver. This dude is different, straight up different. Bama was one of the first teams interested in him, and they got themselves an absolute gem in that commitment right there. So, gentlemen, I want to end this stream by talking about the game. I don't have to say it. And Hayes says, not going to lie, when I thought NIL was introduced, I thought that it would be just players signing brand deals, selling jerseys. Never would have imagined pay to play. 100%.
Facts.
No,
Facts.
100%.
Facts. I did though, Hayes. I did. You know why? Because you never underestimate the next person's greed. I'm gonna do whatever it is to do to win. If Hayes giving him,
well, Hayes and I are young, right? Like Hayes, this is the crazy thing. Hayes is this successful. He's even younger than me.
Yeah.
Right. So we have this optimistic view, right? That comes with youth, right? Where you're like, oh, well, this is going to be the answer. Coach, you have more life experience. You know what I mean? So that, okay, well, part of human nature is greed, and you just opened up.
I'll tell Hayes this. I was in college in 96, from 96 to 2001. And I'll tell you this, even back then at Division II HBCU schools, right? Which is a big deal within that community. Even then, you got money switching hands like water. Trust me. You know what I mean? So I can't even imagine what it is. You know, these coaches' jobs are on the line, bro. You know, we watched Blue Chips back in the early 90s and thought that was ridiculous. Well, that was going on then in basketball. And basketball is a whole other world compared to college football. Basketball is 20 years before football when it comes to these monies being changed. And basketball is another AAU and all those kind of things in basketball. And anybody coach basketball will tell you the basketball is Brinsky can tell you that. Shout out to Brinsky. Basketball is a whole nother animal with monies being exchanged. So that pay for play thing is exceptionally real. I just love the fact that the revenue sharing is coming, because then it'll be no more hiding. It'll be no more closed behind the door bidding for players. No, everything will be above board. It's got to be on paper for everybody to see.
And Shadow with the great comment saying April 14th, 2014, the NCAA voted to lift restrictions on feeding first for all athletes in 345 Division I schools effective. Yeah. How do people forget how recent this was? The NCAA has dropped the ball at every single turn.
That's the inception.
And it is what it is. Lisa with the $10. Thank you very much for the donation, Lisa, saying registration fee for today's class. Roll Tide, you gentlemen rock. Higher football education. Thank you very much for being in here. And thank you, everybody, for being in here. The two most valuable assets you have in life is time and health, and you're spending your time with us. And that means the world to me. I'll answer one more question before we talk about Bama, Georgia. Keenafy asked, what's holding up revenue sharing? That's it. You have to structure it, right? And so right now they're getting everything in place to structure how they're going to do this. And once they figure that out, that's going to be rolled out. But to me, that's the only answer. That is the only answer. But Hayes, I did agree with you, man. I thought that this would be more like Gatorade wants to sponsor Jalen Milroe, and like that's going to Dr. Pepper. Like I thought that was going to be the 90% of NIL, and then 10% would be these, what it is. Instead, it's 10%, it seems like what I thought it was going to be, and 90% the other way. So it could, Boomer, but I also think in some roundabout ways, the direction the NCAA is already going is going to answer some of that. But in terms of back pay, we have to remember everybody's talking about the NCAA lawsuit with Reggie Bush. There's already a lawsuit on the docket scheduled for 2025. I believe it's House is the one where they were like, okay, we're going to settle and we're going to do revenue sharing. But I believe it's Johnson versus NCAA. There's already a case on the docket that nobody's talking about that's basically the same thing as the Reggie Bush lawsuit, but in a much bigger facet. Nobody's talking about it. It's already there. So whether Reggie had entered this lawsuit or not, like that's the thing that kills me. People are like, oh, what he's doing is this, that, and the other. They say this without doing a shred of research into understanding the cases on the docket. And I'm not saying you did that, Boomer, but I've seen several people in the media be like, this is so bad. He's going to, whether he did this or not, Johnson v. NCAA is already on the docket scheduled for 2025, and it's talking about back pay for athletes. It's already been there. And we've been talking about it on this channel for a year. And I don't understand how if I, who's not a media figure, with less than 23,000 subscribers can do this, how some people that actually are in the media, that are actually working for these big corporations, they don't understand this.
They don't do the research.
So yeah, Boomer, that's not at you, right? Like this is at people who are saying like that are actually have a career in this, and they're like, oh, well, this is going to be the detriment. And it's like, you don't realize that there's been a case on the docket for a year and a half. It's the same thing. But because it's not Reggie Bush, people don't read into it. No, this was going to happen whether he introduced this lawsuit or not about back pay. That's why they have to figure something out, Boomer, because you're 100% right. It not only his lawsuit, but if Johnson wins, it will change the landscape of college football.
It's kind of like Matthew Slusk. Everybody wants to throw this guy under the bus, but I'm like, well, how come nobody did that with Jaden Rashada? Because that's exactly what Jaden Rashada did. It's the exact same scenario.
Well, and then ever since he's done it, man, you have another player on UNLV who's entered. You have a player on Washington who's now entered. You have Bear Alexander who's entered. There be dark days ahead, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
This is where we are, right? Luckily, we're here to help you navigate through the storm. Speaking of storms, hopefully there's not a big one for the game of the week, Alabama versus Georgia. Guys, Coach Sean, I want to start with you on this game. This is, Lord, you're right, Hayes Leary from Georgia Tech today. I don't know if y'all saw this. Christian Leary is leaving Georgia Tech as well. So, wild. Absolutely wild, right? Coach Sean, talk to me about Bama, Georgia. This is a beautiful game. We're so lucky we're being treated to this. You're on mute. Or no, you're not on mute. Just can't hear you.
I can't hear him either.
Okay, my mic was muted. I didn't even. This dadgum mic, man. It's got a button on the damn top, and your chin hit it, and it's ridiculous, bro. You know what I mean? My bad, brothers. So for me, really quickly on this game, I went back and I watched Alabama again against Wisconsin. Man, I went back and watched Georgia's last game against Kentucky, and this is what I'll tell you guys, man. I was gonna talk about this on my channel tonight at 6, but I'm gonna give you the quick version right now, really quickly. Remember, man, when you talk about football at its highest level, shout out to my boy Brinsky, you know what I mean? When you talk about football at its highest level, remember, coordinators attack. Now, it's different if you have a weak player we saw on film, we will pick on him. That's a fact. That all the way from college to high school to youth league to whatever you coached, right? If you have a corner that I know for a fact has shown multiple films that he don't like tackling, we may run at him. He don't like covering, of course. But in the grand scheme of things, coordinators attack concepts. Please believe that. We attack concepts. What you line up in, I'm gonna attack that. Right? I went back and I watched that Wisconsin game, and I really found out that something that I missed completely. That's why I like to watch the game back without any sound. And Alabama lined up. Coach DeBoer ran the same play like 7 times over. They line up with trips to the field and trips to the boundaries. I lost count of how many times he came out in that formation. Trips meaning 3 receivers, boundary and field side, short side of the field and wide side of the field. They done that several times. What that's trying to do, guys, with the tight end being on the side by himself, we call that naked, right? When the tight end's on the side by himself without any receivers, that's called, in our terminology, naked. What that's trying to do is your naked side tight end is trying to make that corner who's up close, obviously, because there is no receiver. So the corner's not far back in coverage. He's up close like a linebacker, right? What you're trying to do is you're trying to make the cornerback play run support. You're trying to make that cornerback on that naked side play run support. We want him in run support. Come up and get you some. That's what we want him to do, right? Wisconsin opening a lot of cover 3 looks, man. Georgia will play some cover 3 as well, just not the same. I noticed Wisconsin had these little guys coming up. Georgia will put linebackers out there. Georgia will flip that and put linebackers out there. Those linebackers can run, right? Some
Yeah.
guys that can hold up and run support, and some guys that can play the pass. I noticed that. Um, but cover 3 guys really quickly is always vulnerable. It's vulnerable. And Coach Carl, Coach Al, you tell me if I'm wrong. Cover 3, when I'm attacking a team in cover 3 as an offensive guy, I'm attacking the seams, right? And I'm attacking the flats, right? You can attack Georgia in the seams. You can attack Georgia in the flats. This is a whole fact, right? Um, we noticed on the Wisconsin game that Alabama done a lot of that. They didn't run the running back out on a necessarily a wheel route. We call it an arrow route where you release, but then you cut toward the sideline. That route would be open against this Georgia team, right? Georgia is a very aggressive, prideful defense. Kirby's a prideful coach. He don't like to come out of what he like to do, right? He wants to beat you the way he know how to beat you. So the post corner route will be there. Obviously, better competition and coverage. There will be times that Alabama and opportunities that Alabama will have to score a lot of points against this defense. Now, will they do it? That's just a whole nother beast. This is going to be a very interesting matchup to me because quite frankly, to be honest, and I really hadn't spoke on it because I don't really like I'm not satisfied how our defense play, right? Sure, we play well at times, but we give up a lot of plays on the perimeter, man. We give up a lot of plays on the perimeter to less fortunate teams than the one we're about to see on Saturday, right? Our defensive backs, while young, as we all knew, right? These guys are utterly awful in coverage at times. Now, it doesn't seem that way because nobody's completed any passes against us. We hadn't played a QB that can, but it's not because we just played so well. It's because we hadn't played a quarterback that can extenuate our weaknesses right now. There are receivers open in our defense. Trust me. Wisconsin had several receivers on mesh routes open. The dude just obviously couldn't hit them. If you give Carson Beck time, he's gonna hurt us in the pass game, man. We got to get pressure on Carson Beck. We have to get off the field on third down. If we get Georgia in 3rd and 7, we cannot let these guys create first downs and move the chains. If they do, we're gonna be in some trouble, man. Right? And on the opposite side of the ball, on 3rd down, we have to create points. I don't care if it's 3 points, I don't care if it's 70 points. We have to create some type of points, man. It's very, very important. So 3rd down for me is important. Getting pressure on Carson Beck is important, and attacking these guys in the defense that they give us, taking what Georgia give us. We don't have to go for the big play every time. We don't got to chunk it 70 yards downfield every time. Take what they give you. They'll give you small spaces in the seams and the flats. They'll give it to you. They gave it to Kentucky. Keepers, things of that nature. If Alabama can do that, Alabama will win this football game.
I love that. And John, as I pass it to you, there's 2 things I wanted to talk about, Coach. One, in terms of, finally I can get back to Candy Crush. I love Boomer, man. He always cracks me up. 2 things I wanted to talk about. One, in terms of pressure. I was on a show and someone said, hey, just blitz. And our thing is like, hey, Beck is really good against the blitz. I think it was actually Monday with Coach I. We were talking about this. Not all blitzes are created equal.
Fact.
It's not, to me, about blitzing. And if you do blitz, you have to create pressure. Coach, you said the word. It's about pressure. Carson Beck against the blitz is very good. If you don't create pressure, he carves it. Like, historically, he absolutely will carve it. Now, if you can convert that blitz into pressure, that's where you can start really getting to rattle him as much as you can. That's how it has to be. 2, one of the things you've talked about a lot is the post corner. Now, this is something Bama fans will like. While I do agree with you, Coach, that across the board, Georgia is much more talented than is Wisconsin. That post corner was also completed against Ricardo Hallman, who I believe is one of the best in all of college football at the cornerback position. He's a monster. So that is something that does make me feel a little bit better. It's like, oh, Jeremy went toe-to-toe with Ricardo Hallman, and Ricardo Hallman is probably, I don't think there's a probably. In my opinion, he's the 2nd best cornerback in the Big Ten, behind only Will Johnson. And then Ohio State has some dudes, but Hallman had 7 interceptions last year, like 3 pick sixes. That guy's a beast. John, talk to me.
Yeah, so it's an interesting game. Number one, I think we can't overlook the injuries. Georgia is slammed with the injury bug. I know they're not going to have 2 defensive tackles. They lost.
They're probable.
Okay,
I have the list for you right here. So Bama has Rousseau, Richard Young, Jeremiah Alexander, all as probable. For Georgia, Roderick Robinson, running back, out. London Humphreys, out. Tate Ratledge, out. Michael Williams, questionable. Savion White, wide receiver, questionable. Jordan Hall, defensive line, questionable. Warren Brinson, defensive line, probable.
And Ratledge is a big one. I believe he was.
That's a big one.
American. So, he was a stud on their line. Jeremiah Alexander, according to Stephen M. Smith, as of yesterday, is a go. He will be playing in this game. So, and that's just according to him. But yeah, when you look at this, I think it's going to come down to health for Georgia. You know what I mean? How healthy are you going to be, and how are you going to look with it? Because, in my opinion, as uncreative as people say about Mike Bobo, you know what I mean, and as Georgia offense is going to be, they're going to do what they're going to do. I believe that they're not going to come off their game. They're not going to try to be fancy, anything cute. They're going to say, we're going to line up and we're going to run the ball and we're going to do play action. And here's where we're going to run it. Because as a casual fan, I go, well, there's no wide receiver that scares me. Well, Georgia has won how many national championships in 2 years without a big time wide receiver? You can make the argument maybe for Pickens, but how much was he hurt during that process? Like, you had Brock Bowers, yes, of course. You had Ladd McConkey. But I would make the argument that Bowers was really the one dude that was the standout guy, and he wasn't a wide receiver. So, like, at the end of the day, I'm with you, Coach, on this whole, like, I agree that our defense has played pretty good, but when you go back and you watch, Red Morgan, you watch Xavier Brown, you even watch sometimes with Deontay Lawson, these guys get lost, and when people start running mesh routes, Deontay Lawson gets lost in traffic. He gets hung up on getting blocked. He can't shed blocks really well. Red Morgan, he just can't. He, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, he doesn't look fast enough. He just doesn't turn around and run with a receiver. Like,
Stay in phase too long.
Yeah, okay, there we go. So there you go. There's the coach speak I needed. So the receiver just runs by him, and I'm like, it can't be that complicated, right? You know what I mean? So of course I don't know how this stuff works like you guys do. But when I look at this, like, I think it's going to be a hell of a game. I'm a gambler. Vegas doesn't lie. They say less than a touchdown. This is going to be an extremely close game. This game's going to come down to the wire, right? So there's just one, in my opinion, there's one X factor in this game, and he's been the X factor since 2 years. You know what I mean? The past year, and he's the guy that beat Georgia, and it's Jalen Milroe. Right. Yeah. So this whole game, to me, we can sit here and break down all you want about the offensive line, the defensive backs, Ryan Williams, and all this stuff. I look at two things. How is Jalen Milroe going to hold up in this game? Right. You can look and see if Elijah Pritchett's going to hold up in the pass protection, of course. Hopefully have a tight end on that side to help chip block or something like that. And does this offense finally get Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law involved? Do they get the ball? Because we know, in my opinion, like you said, Coach, they're going to run a cover three. I'm sure they're not going to allow Ryan Williams to blow the top off.
That's a fact.
They're going to keep everything in front of them, right? So how patient will Jalen Milroe be? Will he be willing to dunk off to the mesh route to Kobe Prentice or a pyramid route to Kendrick Law when he scored the touchdown, right? So at the beginning of the season, he's Western Kentucky. It's stuff like that I believe is what's going to come down to. It's a bend, don't break, right? Jalen's going to have to be patient, dunk the ball off these 5, 6, 7 yard routes, run the ball when he's needed, and we got to score on almost every drive down the field. Like Coach said, even if it's a field goal, I don't care. We went out and paid whatever amount of money for this NIL kicker. Let's put this dude to use. Let's win the game methodically like we need to. We don't need the big flashy stuff, in my opinion, in this game because Kirby's not going to be flashy. I can tell you that right now. As long as you're up by 1 point when it hits 0-0, that's all that matters. So,
yeah. Fact, man. It's 100% fact. Let me say this real quick, Kai, before you get up out of here. John said it, bro. I can't agree more. The thing about it is you could play great on defense, man. I'm telling you, this is a true fact, what I'm about to tell you. If you're a Georgia fan and you're honest, Jalen Milroe is what Kirby is worried about right now.
Yes.
He ain't worried about our defense. He's not worried about Ryan Williams. Okay. Jalen Milroe is what keep coaches up at night because you could have the best defensive called. Everybody's covered, right? Your linebackers playing in the middle of the field, getting their spy on. Everybody's playing perfect. We have stopped you utterly. And Jalen will break a tackle and go for 70. That is every coach's worst nightmare. Look what used to beat us back in the day at Alabama. Those mobile quarterbacks that you give the opportunities to because there is no defense for that. There is no defense for that. Remember this too, man. Tate Ratledge is out, but Georgia has a kid behind him named Micah Morris, I think it is. He's like 6'4", 6'5", 330, and he may be a better run blocker than Tate Ratledge is. Not a better pass blocker, but a run blocker. This dude is he's a monster, man. And lastly, Jalen Milroe has got to have a decent game this game, man. Yep. We the thing that frustrates me more than anything, I guess I'm just an offensive guy. I cannot stand 3 and outs, right? We got to have competent play calling on 3rd and short. If it's 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, man, just a competent play call. We don't got to get overly aggressive, man. Just a competent play call, right? If we can't get it, let's let what's it, burn it, use his leg. Let's flip the field and make Georgia earn it, right? The defensive backs has got to be ready to tackle this game because they are going to attack the perimeter. Kirby's not going to change. They're going to take some shots downfield. If I was playing Alabama, I would go at their secondary. Carson Beck would be the best quarterback we faced to date, and he don't need a lot of time to get the ball out, right? So those would be the keys to this game. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how we defend the seams in this game because that's where usually we've been getting kind of burnt at in the seams. But yeah, no, I agree 100%, Coach. I think it's going to come down to Milrow at the end of the day, and it's going to be a fun game to watch.
Here's a question I have for both of you, because one of the things, like, I agree, the seams is where I'm most worried about, right? Zabian is growing. He's been burnt once. And the one time, okay, he's been beaten twice, but one of them, like, even Womack came out and said, he's like, that wasn't on him, that was on us. We didn't get the play call in, and he's looking at us like, what am I doing? That was on the coaches. Now, the other time, he's a young corner. Happens to the best of them. But he's been growing. Here's my question, right? And then I want y'all to put this in your back pocket, and then I'm going to kind of give my analysis, and then I would like to hear y'all talk about this. Alabama has a luxury right now in the secondary with Moore and Sapp. So my question is do you think they could roll coverage? Meaning, like, if they're worried about the seams, have Sapp over top and roll Malachi Moore kind of down into the box, because one of the things Alabama can do is they can almost switch what they want to do in terms of rolling these safeties. So Sapp is a guy that he doesn't get beat in coverage very often. He has been lights out this year. He is graded so high. I think there was a stat that said he's allowed like a 7 QBR when he's targeted. Like, it's just, he has been a coverage demon. Could you roll coverage to allow him to help with Red Morgan and Devontae Smith? Because here's the one thing about both of those guys is they're first-year players. Like, Devontae Smith has been at Alabama, but he's been hurt. This is a new defense for him. He's a first-year player. Red Morgan's a freshman. So they're both learning on the fly. 2, whenever I look at this game, I'll give you my quick synopsis of it, and then I want to hear y'all answer that or thoughts on that. I agree with both of you. Jalen Milrow is the X factor. Now, we know that Kirby will try and spy him. One of the things I'm interested in is how the pin and pull will disrupt those defenders spying Jalen Milrow whenever there's a called quarterback run, because then you're going to have the guys going into space, accounting for some of those spies and allowing Jalen to get free. 2, I think that the offensive line for Bama this year is better than it was last year, right? And this year, I absolutely loved Jace McClellan, right? John, you know how I felt about Jace. I'd talk about him all the time. That guy was a warrior, though, and he needed someone to save him from himself. He was banged up most of last year, right? But that guy was such a warrior that you had to drag him off the football field for him not to be with his brothers. He was banged up most of the year. Our running backs are healthier in this game. I think that will be something that can lead to success for Alabama. My biggest question is, if we can't stop Georgia from running the football, that's where it's going to be very difficult for our defense to do anything that they really want to do. Because if they can get to the edge, it's going to be a long day. They have very good running backs. And I understand some of them are hurt. Nate Frazier's a monster. He runs a 10-5 100-meter dash. You don't want to let him get to the outside, because there are very few people that can catch him. Luckily, you do have Damani Jackson, but you never want to be in a situation where you're like, please God, let my cornerback run this running back down. You've already lost the battle if that's where you are. So for me, how can we get Jalen Milrow and this offense going? Coach Sean, I'll tell the people, one of our conversations 2 weeks ago against Wisconsin, during the first half of that game, we were like, what in the world is going on with play calling? And then the second half came, and it was like, oh, okay, this is looking better. That has to be the entirety of the Georgia game. It can't be for one half. It has to be the entirety. And I think there is something to the staff has been slowly building, but I'm interested in hearing y'all's take on that, right? I think that if we are going to win, LT Overton has to have a big day. Tim Keenan has to have a big day. Jahad Campbell has to have a big day. The safeties have to have a big day. And Jalen Milroe has got to do Jalen Milroe things. Coach Sean, I'll start with you. What do you think about being able to roll the safeties? Could that be something we see? And we'll see. Corey Lewis says, well, how in the hell did Kentucky stop and Alabama got better talent and they can't? Nobody's saying they can't. But we're talking football, Corey.
It's not about it.
Name, Corey, out of the last 6 times Georgia has played Kentucky, how many times have they covered?
Exactly.
Auburn lost to New Mexico State last year, and it took Bama 4th and 31. This comparative notion, right? Like this transitive property. I don't know how many times we have to actually see that it doesn't work in college football for that to be the go-to. Transitive property does not work. Kentucky plays them very close. Nobody's saying Bama can't, but we're also not going to sit here and not talk about where Bama has struggled. We're not going to sit here and talk about like, oh, Bama's been 100% in the secondary and they are exceptional at stopping the outside run.
No,
they haven't been. They haven't been.
Right.
Now, the reverse of that is neither has Georgia. Georgia is more susceptible to the run this year than any Georgia team of the last few years, right? Like, that's going to be something that Alabama can absolutely do. So, Coach Sean, talk to me about the safeties being able to roll them and your thoughts on what I had said before we get out of here.
Corey, shout out to Corey Lewis. Much love, Corey. But ask yourself, why was LSU not able to consistently run the ball, but Michigan was, right? LSU's supposed to be a better team, right? Why couldn't they run the ball? It's schematics, man. It's what you practice for during the week, right? You practice for this opponent. This opponent does this well, so let's focus on this. So it changes week to week to week to week to week, and you learn from film study how to get better. That's why the more games you have, the more film you have. That's how that works, bro. It's early in the season. That's how you have these. Well, damn, how did LSU not be able to run the ball, but Michigan did? It's all film. It's all what you practice on from Monday to Friday. It's all film, Monday to Thursday. So it changes week to week to week, right? So as far as rolling the safeties, yes, I do think we'll be able to do that depending on formation and down and distance. It's okay to roll the safeties if they're beating you to the perimeter, and if whatever they're doing is causing us to adjust that alignment. Yes, you are 1,000% correctly. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to get in a situation where they do what we call dummies. They'll line up in a dummy formation, same formation they've been hitting you on, right? Where you commit
Sark
resources
used to
one
do
side of the
this
field.
beautifully. Yep.
That's a whole fact. And they end up hitting you on the backside, with several different plays. And remember this. Bama with this vision coverage, right? It's still sort of, it ain't pattern matching. Please don't quote me on that. It's not matching. But there are some principles of matching that they do. I've noticed that. Just some principles, right? Um, Georgia has no choice, guys, but to take shots down the field, right? They don't have Brock Bowers anymore to kill us. They have some great tight ends. Oscar Delp is great, right? I'm not sure if he's playing or not, but Georgia's scheme is what it is, guys. Their film study is not a very difficult one. It's just not. They're not very versatile on offense, right? But what they do, they remind me of Michigan. What they do, they do it well. And as far as pinning and pulling is great. Shout out to Coach Al. You know what I mean? Coach Al can tell you the same thing. Pinning and pulling works well unless the defense is getting penetration on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Then pinning and pulling can sort of blow up in your face. Pinning and pulling is supposed to be an aggressive style of running the ball. But if you're allowing them penetration on your side of the football and creating clutter in running lanes, then it don't work, right? a la our last play against Michigan, right? If you allow penetration on their side of the football, right, it just the penny and pulling just don't work. All you're doing is creating clutter for your running backs. My thing is this, man, really quickly, and I'll pass it to John. Outside of everything we've talked about, the quarterback, the schematics, third down, I just don't see this being a high scoring game at all, bro. I see people talking about, man, look,
I have
I've seen people.
24-27.
I don't think we're gonna score over 50, 51 points, man. Me. I heard these are the same people I heard to myself, we're gonna beat South Florida 51-17. Like, bro, I don't know which I think sometimes these glasses of y'all's are so crimson that y'all just can't help yourselves, right? I ain't gonna lie about it, bro. You know what I mean? This is not gonna be a high scoring game. It's just not. We ain't gonna score no damn 40 points. Y'all are crazy. Like, what game y'all watching? You know what I mean? If we do, shout out to y'all, right? I'm wrong and will gladly be wrong, right? I hope we score 50.
Yeah, I'd love to be wrong.
I'd love to be
Yep.
wrong about that. But brother, listen, this is the best defense by far that we went against. Don't forget the Kentucky game, forget the South Florida game. Kirby will have these guys more than motivated. They already trying to take Jalen Milroe's quotes and create some type of narrative for them. Jalen said our defense, something Jalen said, they already trying to use that as bulletin board material. Kirby would not allow this team to go in there and lay an egg, right? They will be ready. They will be ready. Um, Finally, Jalen Milroe's the key. Bottom line. How they use Jalen Milroe will win this game for the University of Alabama. Low scoring game in the 20s, both teams.
John, final words, and then we're gonna have to hop out of here because I got Bleacher Report at 10:45.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'll make this real quick. I got the game at 20-17, Alabama winning. There's no doubt about it. This is not going to be a high-scoring game.
Oh,
I don't think either team benefits from any situation, whether it gets out of hand as far as like scoring, defense. No, both teams are going to do what they do best, right? That's how you win games, is doing what you do and doing it and executing it at the best way you can, right? So it's one thing Nick Saban obviously always said. Kalen DeBoer kind of does the same thing, obviously. To your point about, Georgia may be down running backs or whatever. Look, the guys behind them are 4 and 5-star guys. Don't get it twisted. The name on the back of the jerseys mean almost nothing, right? So the next dude up is probably just as ready, if not more ready than that guy, because he wants to prove himself even more. So to get more playing time. So I think we can't get really that twisted up too much. Jalen Monroe needs a good game. Elijah Pritchett cannot get whipped on that right side in this game. We
fact.
need him to at least be serviceable. Not asking for anything great, but serviceable. As far as rolling the coverage goes, um, I don't know how much you roll Malachi Moore, because Malachi Moore has a habit of getting injured when he gets too much time in that box, right? So he has a very strong pattern of getting these injuries the moment we stick him near that box. But Keon Sabb is playing that vision too damn well to put him in the box, in my opinion. So I think that's a tough scenario that they could be in, is like you got one guy that is severely injury prone. And don't get me wrong, you don't want to play scared. You don't want to play not to get hurt, right? But at the same time, you have to look at the circumstances. This is going to be the most physical team we're playing possibly all year, next to maybe even Texas. And from that standpoint, as far as in the trenches go, uh, well, I could make the argument with Oklahoma as well. But either way, like, it's going to come down to just sustain the drives, like Coach said, convert on third downs. But, Coach, here's my thing. When I look at this, Alabama does a superb job on first down offense. So I think that will hands down be the key. Just get 4 yards on first down. That way, by the time you get to third down, it's third down and 1 and 2, right? So, and let Jam Miller eat, right? So eat up the clock, shorten the game, win the game by 3 points or however many you want to win it by. And I think it's not too complicated. I think people tend to try to overcomplicate things. You're spot on, Coach, with this. Nobody's scoring 50 points. No, I don't think anybody's scoring in the 30s, maybe even not in the high 20s. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough physical game on both ends.
Love it. Gentlemen, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find all of your great content, and then I am going to have to sprint over to get my sound check ready. Coach Sean, talk to him.
Tap in with me tonight, 6 o'clock. John, you welcome, brother. I'll send the link out to you guys. Ty, I know you don't know if you'll be busy, but I'll send it just anyway, just in case. We're gonna dive into some concrete stuff. JMHO Sports Talk on Twitter and YouTube. Tap in tonight.
John.
Bama Talk, very simple, at Alabama Nation as far as Twitter goes. Simple stuff.
Yep, and you can find us right back here on Monday, breaking down the weekend slate. You can find me after the game on the Bleacher Report app, reacting to Alabama versus Georgia. We'll be on the Bleacher Report app in 16 minutes, doing the college football pick'em. And until next time, let me introduce y'all to the fourth member of the panel, the spinning wheel of doom, and it spins. Thank you.